Oh, yeah.
I got this feeling inside my bones. It goes electric wavy when I turn it on.
Hello, testing. There I am.
All right. So I did tell people at break to Google Moz, M-O-Z, year in review. So it's amazingly transparent, and you also said that in that document, you publish more than what they do in public companies. So can you share the why behind that and how that started?
Yeah, it started before my time, to be clear, with the original CEO, Rand, who he shared it because I think he wanted to bring people along with his entrepreneurial journey. And it really did get people engaged. Like, our customers also became, I think, emotionally invested in the health of the company and the journey we were on, and it created a different kind of relationship, almost like they were sort of rooting with us and alongside us in the journey to grow the business. And over time, I think that changed into, as later when the values became formalized, and transparency is one of our core values, it became one of the ways that shows up, and it became a way to keep ourselves honest. And I discovered that it's easy to talk about being vulnerable, it's hard to do it. And especially if you're in this position as a leader where you're going to need to raise money and you want to impress people and you want to impress customers, I think most companies choose to be like, don't share that information, it's not good, and we want to be able to put the message out exactly to the people we only want to know under NDA, and to paint a picture of ourselves in a certain way and sort of hide your dirty laundry, because the three fears are: customers won't sign up, they're gonna think your company is like crazy, and especially if you share the problems. Or two, your competitors are gonna read your roadmap and know your financials, and they're gonna use it against you. And then three, how are you gonna get investors if they know like this history of like good times and bad times, right? But we decided to be a little different and say, well, but all these things are true about us. And we think that customers will stick with us even if we're having a hard time or make some mistakes, so long as we continue to meet their need. And that's the challenge we want to have ourselves. Let's meet their need, right? And then they'll stick with us in the good times and bad. The competitor piece, we kind of just came, like, everyone's gonna be different about this, but we came to a peace of mind where, look, our competitors are gonna do what they're gonna do. And even if we put our ideas out there and they execute on them and execute better, like, well, that's just the game, right? Like, our job is to beat the competition and not overly worry about them. It always comes down to execution. And then on the investor piece, this has actually been the best part. When you are really transparent about the ways you're great and the ways you're really messed up, you only get people coming to you and offering to give you money who are genuinely along for that journey, and who are like, yeah, I know companies are messed up. Every company I invest in is messed up, and every board I'm on is messed up. And so you get people who you don't have to hide anything. They know all about you. They're signed up for it, and I have a really amazing board. And I think that they came to us because they knew the Moz journey, they had seen it over time. They're not afraid of the ups and downs of trying to grow a business. So that's a long answer to where it sort of started and sort of what it does for us today.
No, that's fantastic. And on the flip side, what do you choose to hold back that you cannot or don't want to be as transparent about?
Yeah, that's a great question. So transparency is a value, a core value, and so is empathy. And those can come in conflict with each other, right? I mean, it can be very transparent to tell someone, you look terrible today. Wouldn't be very empathetic, right? So we make trade-offs all the time between balancing out what contribution am I gonna make with this transparency, and what's my intention for this transparency? And that means oftentimes I don't share things that I feel like are like personal or messy or wouldn't be empathetic to someone, right? I'm not gonna say, I will say, hey, we launched a product, it didn't work like we wanted to, it fell short of our goals, and that was really disappointing for us. But I don't say, because the person I had leading it turned out was not good at their job and misled me in the interview process, right? Like, you wouldn't do that, you wouldn't do that. Or you wouldn't say, what are other things we leave out? I mean, we also leave out a bunch of stuff that feels important internally, but that externally I don't think customers will really care about. Like when we redid the billing system, and for us it was like, this huge, gigantic, emotional, freeing thing that was like an 18-month process that helped us like get to a next level. But like customers don't really care about that, right? So even though internally it was like, oh my God, we can charge people and get invoices and do new pricing. You know, in the annual report, it's like customer upgrades. You know, so like the weighting isn't always reflective of the actual investment and import to the internal business, because the audience is, yes, some Mozers. You know, I realize that as I'm writing the annual report, I am creating the sort of like company life story for people who are currently at the company and for people who in the future will be at the company. And so that stakeholder group is there. And there's a little humble brag in parts of it, right? Where it's like, and also we do this kind of awesome stuff. Maybe you should work with us. There's a little humble brag in there for that purpose. But there's, you know, it's also the stakeholders are the community, to engage them, to be very authentic, that we make mistakes, and that, you know, the annual report is an opportunity to own the mistakes to our customer and to our community, and to talk about the commitment to doing better, and to show hopefully, you know, actions of, and here are the things we did when we screwed up that thing, which we're really sorry about. So there's just a lot of different stakeholders.
Yeah, and I think you and I talked about empathy versus transparency. Like, we get this a lot at Tiny Pulse, which is someone leaves for whatever reason, and we send out an email, and our communication is that person left. And if you want to keep in touch with him or her, here's their contact information. But we get feedback through virtual suggestions like, oh, well, I thought we were transparent. Why can't you share why? Right? And, you know, there's different reasons, a lot of, and, you know, folks in this room understand that. But I'm just curious, like, how do you folks handle that, you know, given your values of transparency and empathy as well?
Yeah, this is one that, you know, I have a way that I've been doing it, and I'm currently doing it, and also I question it sometimes. And that we choose that whenever someone leaves, no matter how awful and ugly it was, we don't talk about why. And we say, hey, this person, you know, this person's moved on. Oftentimes, actually, the majority of the time, exits are managed in such a way that the person who maybe is actually leaving involuntarily will be able to feel like they own the decision, and actually themselves put out the communication of like, hey, it's been great, Moz. I've got a lot of friends here, but like my last day is Friday. And so from the team perspective, it looks voluntary, like, oh, that person is leaving, huh? I wonder why they chose to leave. Do they know something about the company I don't know? And, you know, obviously, you guys all are in HR, so you know all the crazy shit that goes down that other people don't know. And it is so tempting, especially if the person has done something really awful, right? But they're very charming and well-loved, but they've done, it's like, oh, but nobody knows. But, oh, it's so tempting to just want to be like, let me tell you why I made this decision. Okay, it was not done lightly. And this person that you're like, oh, but they're so smart and we all love them and now they're leaving, there must be something bad about Moz. Like, it's so tempting to want to put my own story out there. And I don't. I don't. I just suck it up and I think about the high road. I think about Michelle Obama. And I'm like, she can take the high road, I can take the high road. This is all training for bigger things to come and more high roads to take. And I just say, yeah, I'm really sad it didn't work. Someone asks me, I reference the values and I say, hey, out of empathy, like whether this person appreciates the empathy I'm showing them or not, because sometimes employees actually would love for you to get in a cat fight. Have you ever had those high conflict people who would love for you to be like, you know, and I'm just like, I'm not going there. So even though they don't appear to value the empathy I'm showing them, it's my values that compel me to take the high road, not yours, right? It's not whether someone deserves it or not. It's not based on their actions. It's my values and my integrity to myself that says I don't need to be the kind of person that's bitter and justifying myself. And the cost is sometimes people think, wow, great people leave Moz and that's really sad. And sometimes I don't get credit for being as strong a leader as I actually am, right? Because it takes a lot of courage to make personnel changes, and I think the team likes to see that sometimes. And I miss that sort of opportunity to be like, yeah, I'm a badass. I'm not all just hugs and kisses. I'm also a badass, but you know, that's okay. I'll prove badass in other ways.
And then in terms of like transparency, a famous firm down in the Valley, Buffer, they publish their salary and for compensation information publicly, so that they're super transparent from that perspective. And I know that there's trade-offs on that front. Have you folks thought about doing something like that?
I think about this probably like every 12 to 18 months we rehab this conversation. So I'm a big advocate for equal pay, and as all those who have studied equal pay law goes, right, you know that the worst thing you can do is have a culture where people are formally, although that's illegal now, but informally discouraged from talking about their pay. That the best thing we can do to have a socially just world is to encourage transparency, and so I have that strong value, and we create the value. Hey, it's your choice to share your pay information, right? And you can choose to do it or not. I always operate from the assumption, like I bet most of you do, that everybody knows everybody's pay. But we have not gone the buffer step of literally putting this person makes this much money on the website. And I question am I really then fulfilling my values of transparency and sort of the spirit of equal pay? It's possible I'm falling short. You know, in my head, the reason I choose not to make that decision is one of like, well, money is a very sensitive issue for people. It means a lot of different things for their family relationships, for their sense of self-worth, and it doesn't feel right for me to make that choice on their behalf for them, because I don't know what may be going on in their lives and what it looks like for them and their communities or where they're, they're just, people have stuff, you know? So that's the story I give myself on that. And we do have salary bands, and the bands are published, right? So like for the different levels, this is the band and the pay range you're gonna be in, and people therefore can figure out, oh, well, so-and-so's a level 6 engineers, and I know the band for level 6 engineers is such and such. But I haven't yet had the courage to go full, like, nope, we're going all out there. I don't know. Could
Anyone in the audience publish their pay comp? Oh.
Yeah. Okay, so we're all like, I don't know.
Anyone
Okay.
thought about it? No.
Yeah, thought about it. Yeah. You publish the bands, yeah. Same? Yeah, and did you like that? Did it serve a good purpose? Was it?
It was problematic because expenses got lumped into your salary. So if I was flying to conferences, all that was added in. I'm not actually making that much money. Right. This is not real.
I got it. No, that makes a ton of sense. We have something a little similar where there's a band, and you can choose a salary band, but that isn't the same thing as stock. And so you could have someone really senior who, when we hired, they said to me, like, look, I'm single, I don't have kids, I don't have a mortgage, I don't need the money, I'd rather have the equity. Equity is more important to me. So their salary online would look really low compared to someone else who's like, maybe they have a really high salary because they're like, are you kidding? I've got private school, I just bought a house, my car broke down, I need cash right now at this phase I'm in my life, so I'm willing to take less equity in favor. And so even the bands, if we were to publish within it, it feels like you never get the full story about people's compensation. Or maybe I'm just rationalizing. I don't know.
No, it's
TBD,
yeah.
TBD.
Hard subject. So the prior speaker, Aaron Burnett, was saying how you inspired him in the tech scene, especially around diversity and inclusion. So I'm curious as to, what are some of the things that you're most proud of that you've pushed on that front, tactically or philosophically, to really, truly have a ripple effect in our tech community here and beyond?
I mean, we do, I think for obvious reasons, my gender in particular, we have a special opportunity in the tech community to set an example about what it means to truly be an inclusive workplace, and we have, I think, a responsibility to do that. It's something I feel like I'm uniquely positioned to have impact on. And so we do tons and tons of things. If I had to say the things I'm most proud of, it's probably, let me pick three. I'm gonna pick three. One is we actually fire people who don't live the values of inclusion. Like, we don't do any passing the buck, move them around to another team, it's just an interpersonal issue, well, it wasn't that bad, and we believe people when they bring complaints. And I think one of the things that I think is special about Moz, like, I had the experience of being sexually harassed, right? And I know I'm a woman of incredible privilege. I have health, I have wealth, I have education, I have rank, I have power. And for me, I still have to grapple if I'm harassed. Like I'm like, oh, I don't want to be that woman. Should I say something to them? You know, oh, I don't want to be that person. I don't want my husband to know because he's gonna like freak out. I don't want to go through this. On the other hand, that guy was an asshole. And he's a lawsuit waiting to happen, and so they should know about it. And that's hard for me to do. And so you think about like women or people of color in my organization who don't carry around the incredible privilege, strength, and courage that I get to carry around all day, and how hard it is for them to come forward. And I have a lot of appreciation for that. And so we believe folks, and we move people out of the company who are not living the values. There's lots of great places to work, and you don't need to be at Moz, right? So I say that because it should be obvious, but I know it's not. And it's hard to do. It's really hard to do, I think. Second, I'm really proud of, we do a lot of stuff with like middle school girls in STEM, and we bring them into Moz, and we do coaching, and we do like all kinds of, Year Up and Ignite and Tech Bridge and Ada Academy, all these different programs that bring diverse pipelines in. But one I'm really proud of is a relatively new program called Unloop. Has anyone heard of Unloop? It teaches incarcerated, in this case women, how to code. And so we were one of the first companies to participate, and it took their very first graduate. And it was so interesting in the company to see people's reaction when we said, hey, this program's approached us, this really fits our values, right? Because our values are, we show people grace, we give people second chances, we believe there's potential in everyone, we believe that people can be resilient, and we expect that of each other, and we are committed to showing in our actions that this place is for everyone. And it was so funny to see people's like first reactions of like, wait, criminals? We're hiring criminals? How bad is the job market? Like, are we at the bottom of the barrel, and are they gonna steal from us? Are they gonna lie? Are we gonna be safe? Like understandable fears for people who frankly have had enough privilege they don't have to confront the reality of people get incarcerated all the time in this country, right? Like it's too common. It's too common here. We got a problem in America. And so it was I feel a great privilege, though, to have enough advocates at Moz to be like, let me explain why this is a good thing. And they went to the correctional center, and they participated in the program with the women. And these women have to work so hard. They're not allowed to use the internet while learning how to code. And so everything has to be like downloaded into the computer while they practice. And then we did special training before we had our first intern, where we brought all of the managers together to say, hey, how do you speak to someone who's about to be released and they don't have the kinds of job skills and professionalism sort of training and background that we're used to, and get all your hard questions out of the way, and to watch them embrace her when she came out. And everyone's minds were blown once they realized how hard she had to work to get the same skills that they got from just like messing around on their home computer in junior high and high school. And then to see how hard she had to work compared to our other interns, because she didn't have a car, she had no money, she just got out of prison, she has no money. So she has to commute by a bus and then check in with a community sort of parole officer person twice a week in the county where she was incarcerated, which was like Kitsap or something. She has to take a bus to Kitsap twice a week during business hours, and she's not allowed to use a computer after 5 p.m. because of the terms of her release. So how do you grow and learn when, think about her workday, like how many hours a day is she even allowed to grow her skills? And when people started seeing that, I mean, it was like life-changing for everyone on the team, the kind of empathy of, it's not, poverty is not a choice, right? It's a system. And we can make changes in the system. And it was like the support they gave her, they lobbied to say, hey, she had a 6 months internship, but she needs another 3 months because she didn't get the fair allotment of time. Right, just the hours a day she could devote to this, and how amazing it was to see like other Unloop people come to the office, and like people were so proud of themselves for being part of a solution, right? So I think things like that really walk the walk about like we're willing to put things at risk and try things, and it speaks to empathy, and it can be a transformational program if more people invested in it and did it. What was the third thing I was going to talk about?
Any tactics or philosophies
it was
on diversity?
Unloop, and then I had a third one. It was going to be awesome. Shoot, I don't remember.
We can come back.
We'll come back. We do a lot about diversity and inclusion. So.
Yeah, and if you have any questions, you can also put them in Slido, and I'll check that in a few minutes. So in terms of the, it sounds like there was a profound impact when these Unloop folks came to the office. What has been the, when did you have your first intern?
I mean, she would have started last fall, and so she graduated like early summer, like she progressed on from early summer.
Yeah, so I'm curious, like, what has been the effect like now? Are people wanting, hey, Sarah, that was
yeah,
great,
we
let's
want
do more?
Yeah, we want more. And Unloop is it's iterative, right? Like she was their first graduate, their sort of first in real life, and so they are currently updating their curriculum and working on getting more programs. And so we're a reference to say, hey, everyone who's curious about this program should call Moz and learn about the experience. So they're growing, they're looking for funding, they've been doing fundraisers. If this is a program that you guys could push through your companies, happy to talk with you about it and connect you with really the managers who dealt with it on a regular basis. The minimum we could do, right, is let go of you have to have the criminal background check. Maybe if it's very secure roles, obviously use your judgment, right? You would have one, but I think on the whole, those criminal background check requirements like really perpetuate this system of poverty and oppression. And we've got to, I think, as a business community, make a commitment to help people, or it'll just keep going. It'll just keep happening,
And so your culture is the slogan is tag fee, which is transparent, authentic, generous, fun, empathetic, and exceptional. So how do you get folks aligned with it? Let's say someone joins the company. Does it start with the interview process, the onboarding, or share with the audience how you get such great alignment?
Yeah, as I'm sure a lot of you have talked about, it came up in the presentation before this one. A lot of the work is in living and talking about your values before the potential candidate even interviews, right? Like we're like a cult. And it's the cult of tag fee, and it's like we're weird and we know it, and we're just like, well, that's just how we've decided to do it. There are lots of different ways to build a company, and there are lots of different great cultures, and so like no judgment on other folks, but like this is our way. So it starts by having the brand out there and talking about it and living it through like public ways, like the year in review where we're like, yeah, we had to lay off a bunch of people because we screwed up a product launch and it was super painful, but here's other things that are going good. Like living the values every day, and doing programs and support and like all the different things. And then that I think tends to bring in people who are already aligned with the values before they even interview. And of course, when we interview, we do all the things I bet you guys are doing already, right? We have a series of questions designed to sort of get out the behaviors of the core value. If they don't talk about the values at all at any point in the interview process, we're like, you must not have even really read the website, because like that's a gimme, like at least talk about it. So, and I don't actually find that to be, like in some ways that's the easy part, because it's a hard discovery for me was it's easy to hire people with the values, like it's easy for me to have those values. It's very hard to implement them every day in a workplace, even for me, right? Like I constantly have to build my skills. I have to read and reread the radical candor stuff, right? Like I have to read all, like it's like a gym where you go, like if you have to keep working out, it's not like I have my certificate in like what's something you can learn and just get good, riding a bike, and so now I ride a bike forever. It's more like a workout and a muscle you have to use. And so the easy part really is hiring people who can say, it's my intention to have empathy, and it's my intention to be exceptional. It's my intention to be authentic. It's a totally different thing to actually be in the workplace, have a truly awful day, feel like being angry or sad or mad at your coworkers, and so you start being snide and sarcastic or throw a temper tantrum and leave, and you could, well, I'm being authentic. I thought authenticity was a value. I'm authentically pissed off, right? Like, doesn't that sound like a kind of like, oh, I'm living the values? Yeah, but we're authentic to our best selves, right? Not our worst selves. We all have our. I have my bad angel and my good angel inside me, and the commitment is I will bring my most best. I will be authentic to the best version of me, and I will balance the authenticity I'm feeling with the empathy I have for others, and with the need to be generous and the need to be transparent. And so, I think the training and the emotional intelligence and the constant investment and what does it mean to live the values in a way where we can still get shit done and grow a company is really hard, really hard. That's the hard everyday work of individual humans on our journeys, Ugh.
Yeah, and you mentioned that your culture is not flawless. There's pros and there's cons, and there's not one right way. And so I'd love for you to share with the audience, maybe what's one pro or one challenge that you're navigating right now.
Yeah, I mean, so the good thing is people are drawn to Moz who value relationships and humans and being in the office and having fun and being joyful. Again, a lot like the previous conversation. And when you manage at Moz, it feels great to be a manager at a place where it's like we have paid vacation and coaching and benefits, and we're the kind of company that if you're having a personal tragedy, go take some time off. You don't have to be here and try to hold your shit together. Like go be where you need to be with the people. Like that sounds like an easy manager job, right? And I think for a lot of it, that does make it easier. You have more tools in your tool belt to show your support of your team. But it does create if fun is a value and I really care about these people, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings or make anybody sad. And what happens if you can't make people sad or hurt their feelings, right? It's like work does not get done. You don't do the coaching you need to do. Like sometimes you have to just have the conflict, right? And the conflict is healthy. And I have observed in the arc of Moz that our managers are really good at firing like poor performers. Like that's an easy one. Managers are very bad at firing people who they really like, who are really nice, who are like mediocre, who dip down to poor, and if you coach them, get back to mediocre for a while and then dip down to poor. You know that person that sort of like, they never get beyond mediocre, but you're constantly sort of picking them up from but they're really nice and they've been with you for a while and you always, you go to lunch together. Like that is hard. And I think it's harder at Moz and other companies because of the feelings, right? Yeah. Because of the kindness, because at Moz we talk so much about all the ways we try to make people happy and have meaning. And so recently, having observed this pattern of like, oh, we are scared of conflict at Moz, and that's weird. Like that can't work. We talk about radical candor, but people aren't doing it. In fact, the praise in public, criticize in private that they talked about in the previous session, that is the school of professionalism I sort of grew up with, right? And I have adjusted and evolved my thinking on that. I have now there's still some kinds of feedback you want to give in private, like if you have that, you're in HR, so you guys know like that really, like you have a personal hygiene issue that's irritating people, like you do that one in private, right? But a lot of other kinds of coaching I actually think is more healthy to have just in the room together on the moment, and you just make it don't make it a big thing by saving it up for a one-on-one. You're just like, hey, this presentation doesn't look fully baked, next time I'd like to see these 3 things. Okay, good. And if you create a culture where the feedback doesn't have to be a bigger deal than it is, and you don't save it up, and it's not like it's always directed at one person, it's just we're always coaching each other, like that is harder to do, but I think way more valuable. And same things with managers. I had to really push managers to say, hey, look, I have noticed a lot of you are keep hanging on to folks that you're constantly then sort of resuscitating back to mediocrity. And this happens all across the org. And those people are taking seats that should be filled by people who are all in and bringing the business forward. And I had to send 2 different emails and do 3 different manager meetings, and then talk to other people to go, you go have these same conversations of like, it is your job to fire people. Like managers didn't fully embrace their accountability of your job is to fire people. I can't fire people for you. I'm not going to do it. It's like, otherwise I don't need you. Because doing the like hugs and cuddles and high fives is the easy part. I could do that in my sleep. The hard part is the constant performance coaching as a team and making those hard calls of saying, hey, look, this isn't really working. Let's get a transition plan for you. Let's pick a date and a time and a soft landing for you. So the culture has got downsides, and we are working on them. And it's been interesting to see the reaction to that, right? And it's like, oh, are the values gone? Does that mean empathy doesn't matter? No, it means it's long-term empathy. It's not empathy in this moment, in this meeting. It's empathy for the arc of that person's career. It's empathy for the whole team meeting their goals so that that team isn't the bottleneck for the whole company meeting its goals. And so the sort of notion of empathy is way more sophisticated than everyone at Moz is happy all the time. It's long-term.
And so do you ever run into a situation where you're trying to coach your manager about their accountability and having to hire and fire? Yeah. Let's say we like the person, but they're just not fitting from a performance perspective, and that manager is just unable to rip the Band-Aid off, despite how much attention and coaching you're giving him or her, well, what happens next?
You know, what the manager above them should be saying, hey, but your team is not meeting its goals, right? So that performance problem should be showing up somewhere. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having the conversation, right? Your team isn't efficient, or it isn't growing, or it's not meeting its deadline, and that's because you have a weak link, right? And actually, I've noticed a pattern of usually if you have a manager who isn't courageous enough to make hard calls in that situation, they probably have accumulated over the years maybe 2 or 3 people on their team who are in that similar state, because they accumulate over time, right? Because you don't take care of it. And so overall, there's this slow, maybe you can have one person like that on the team and not notice a team performance degradation, but over time, it becomes a, hey, your team is not performing at the same pace that the rest of us. And so that becomes that really hard, like, let me make it really clear. Your team is holding back other teams. You're not pulling your weight as a team, and it's your job to fix it. So I need you to go fix it. We're gonna support you in those conversations and give great packages and da-da-da, and your training and your coaching about how to have the conversation, but if you don't fix it, then I need someone who can. And so if you don't turn this around, the next conversation we're gonna be having is one of like, where will you be a better fit? You know, how can I help you move on to go find a different company to be at? So eventually it rolls uphill. It can, that's why I think it builds slowly. What's that like, there's some sort of seafood that boils slowly. Lobsters or something, right? Like they die slowly. This is terrible. You know what I mean though? This particular kind of performance problem, it's easy to get rid of the really bad performers or the people who do something really dishonest and terrible. It's really, really hard with the like, well, they're okay. Because it just happens over time so slowly. Yeah, you guys know the metaphor I mean. Someone say it. No one knows? It's like a lobster who like dies slowly or something. Or is it a frog? Is it the frog?
Oh, you boil the frog in the water.
Boil the frog or something, right? It's the boil the frog problem. Okay.
All right, so
seafood?
Tweet that, TinyCon
River food?
2018. Just kidding. So talking about coaching, and I know you're very, very passionate about coaching, and so are audience members, is like, what type of formal or informal coaching program do you have for your people?
So I love coaching. I need a lot of work. I just need a lot of work, and I need a lot of help being my best me. And so I am a personal believer in coaching, and the power of coaching for me led me to really want to bring it to Moz. As I, on my firsthand experienced, I can get certain kinds of coaching from people who are in the business with me as peers, or when Rand was my boss, as a sort of boss. But there's a totally different kind of coaching that can only happen from someone who is not in the system with you. And I wish that wasn't true, but I think it's just true. I just think it's human psychology. There's something about being outside the system that you get a different kind of perspective, or coaches can say things differently. They say it in a different way. I don't know what it is, but I know it's a fact. And so it was very important to me to bring that perspective, a safe place for employees to get outside the system coaching and advice that they were encouraged to take advantage of, and that they can work on their stuff. So it's not forced coaching. We do not do what I think a lot of companies do, which is like when you have a performance problem, especially if it's an executive who you've sunk a lot of money in and maybe they're really good at some parts of their job, you're like, let's just force them to go to a coach and maybe the coach can turn them around, right? It's kind of the opposite of that. It's the sort of anyone who's ready to up their game can reach out to a company that we have worked with called Halo, who has a handful of coaches. They're all outside Moz. What you talk about is confidential. And you get at least 12 sessions, and if you want more sessions, just ask, and we've never said no. And you can work on career stuff. You can work on, I hate my boss, and I don't know how to get over it. Yeah, I hate my career, but I love the company. Like, there's a lot of different kinds of issues people work. And that has been truly transformative for Moz, right? And so it's a benefit. How many people have taken advantage of it? I don't know the actual numbers, but I think over the course, it's been like 60% have taken advantage of at least some coaching. And unanticipated consequences. Like, I knew some people would grow and learn and have a safe place that's not HR, because we wish people trusted HR, but they don't. They often see HR as part of the system, right? They almost need an outside person to help them go to HR sometimes, right? So how do I bring this to my company? How do I bring my issue to my company? So people have used it for that. Surprising things people use it for are learning how to leave. Like, when you have a company that people love the values and they love the people, it's hard for them to be like, I think I need to quit. And coaching can be great for having people be accountable for their own happiness and accountable for their own okay, I can see you're really emotionally attached to this, but is it actually serving you? And it's probably not serving the company. And so it's actually been great for really wonderful exits and helping people do it, make the hard choice. And we get, on the leadership team, semi-annually, we meet with the Halo coaches, and they will prepare for us themes, right? They do here are the numbers of people who are participating, and then they do themes we're hearing. And, just so that we can take it and go, okay, how do we build this into our engagement program, or an all hands, or is there a message, or is there a manager skill we're missing, so that we do get some sort of intelligence back if there's systemic stuff deep in the org that is otherwise hard for us to see. So I love it. It's a great program. So
Awesome.
good.
So we're going to move to some audience questions. So we'll take care of a quick one. Would you hire the intern from Unlooped, or did you hire the intern from Unlooped?
We would hire her. We did not. We did not have a space, unfortunately. We have other intern programs we'd already committed to, and this was on top of it, but the plan is to hire Unloop interns in the future. So it will happen in the future, but we've got other ones.
So we are in the near end of Q3. Would you say you look to meet your 2018 expectations as it relates to the diversity inclusion goals you have as an organization?
No. My goals are high, and we're not close, right? So we are 42% women in the company overall. We're 25% women in engineering, 25% people of color in engineering, 25% people of color overall in the company. We're about 40% gender diverse on the executive team, and we're 50% on the board, but that's because it's a small board. So it's kind of, law of smaller numbers kind of help me out there. And it makes me sound like I'm really advanced. There's only 4 of us, so it's, not that hard. Yeah, and so that's not good enough, right? And it's hard. I remember now the third thing I was going to say about inclusion. I remember now. Okay, so we've done a great job at these alternative pipelines, right, that bring people in from different walks of life and give them a pathway to careers at Moz. And an unintended consequence that is gross is, if you look at our inclusion and diversity sort of by level in the company, we have a base of lots of women and people of color in the sort of starter jobs, level 1, level 2s, and it's dwindles out quickly as you get to the director and senior level, right? And that's, that's a function of time in their careers. There's no reason to think they're gonna stop there, but it's just where we are in the arc of the company and the pipelines we've been relying on. And I don't think that we're unusual in that with companies who have been working consciously on diversity and inclusion. I don't think that's unusual. What I know is unusual, because I get feedback from the recruiters I work with, is that when I hire for the executive team, which I've done a lot of in the past 2 years, I will not make a hiring decision unless I have had diverse candidates all the way through the pipeline. I will not. I won't do it. And I will tell you, I get a lot of missed opportunity. I get a lot of criticism for that, because what it means is I'll have really important business critical roles that go unfilled for probably 3 or 4 times as long as they would if I hired the first, highly qualified white guy that came in the door. Because that's just there's just more of them. There's just more of them. They're just out there. There's more. If it's a numbers game and it was about speed and speed to hire, I could meet that goal. But if I want to live my values of saying, hey, I have got to give this a shot. I've got to at least be credible. I won't be able to sleep soundly, and I will not be able to look my people in the eye if I don't say, hey, we made an effort, and if you do not interview them, you're not going to hire them. And so we take that extra time, and there is a real cost to the business, and it sucks, and I get a lot of pressure to just hire a qualified person who's first. But I'm clinging to my sort of values and integrity. I will always hire the best candidate. So I don't always hire the woman or the person of color, but I do always go through everyone has to go through, there has to be at least, 1 or 2 candidates that are genuinely diverse for us to have said we really considered it, right? Otherwise it feels pretty hollow. So I'm proud of that. My recruiters hate it. I don't think my board entirely loves it. There are people in my company who don't love it, but there are also people who are in my company who are like, yeah, that's how you make change, yeah, it's hard, but we get it. There are other people who are like, that is why we're here, and that is what we've all signed up for, and we are all willing to have some things go worse than they otherwise would, because that's why change is hard. Otherwise, we'd all have solved this already, right? We'd all have hired everyone, and we'd all be diverse, and it'd be no big deal. We wouldn't be having this conversation. So.
Yeah, on that same note, one of the questions from the audience is, what are the best ways to fight the bro culture that's making the tech headlines right now? Like, we know like Uber had a huge issue with that. So if you were installed as CEO, how would you shake that up?
Oh man, this is why I don't know how I would, if I could be the CEO of Uber. I don't know if I could turn it. I don't know if I would want to sign up for that job. Mm-hmm. I don't want to clean up that mess. Someone else needs to clean up that mess. I don't think I want to take that on. So I have a lot of compassion for those of you that are, in very large companies that are already very well established companies, and you already have an executive team that has a certain culture, and that filters down, and that is the hard job. That's why I said earlier, one of the things I'm proud of is firing people, right? Because I think that it comes down to willingness. Are we willing to fire people, who keep making the same repeated dumb mistakes of yeah, you don't share pictures like that on Slack. Oof. You don't do it. Oh. You get one warning, but that picture objectifies women, and we don't do that here. So you get one warning, and then okay, you're from Europe and it's different there, I understand, so this is your one warning. But in this company here, we don't do that, and we will fire people for that. That's what I think is so hard about these bigger companies, though, where you have very entrenched norms, where it's the 1,000 teeny little decisions a day that every human makes that are really, I have a small company, and we have pockets of little things like that come up, right? I'll still have men that will occasionally fall into mansplaining, I still have, women not being offered the same kinds of complex projects that would allow them to get promoted. And so I have to still, in my company where we're super sensitive and huggy, and we talk about all the time, and we have training, we have all the training you could ever want, and we still have to work very consciously at this all the time and create our checklist of okay, how are we doing on this? Have we given, have we offered this opportunity to anyone else? And I don't know. I think that's why culture change is really hard. I don't have any advice other than when you see it, nip it in the bud. We don't do that here. Believe people of color, believe women, and fire people. And if you don't have a team that's committed to doing that, you're not going to change the culture, right? You're just not.
So what do you have against frogs and lobsters? Just kidding. That was an actual question that came through. Tasty. Just kidding. All right. So you talked about shifting the culture at Moz to be more urgent and deliver more for your customers, and that not enough of a strong bias towards action, right? Take us through how you started noticing that and how you've been transforming that.
Yeah, this is something. Okay, who else this feels like? Are we not delivering? Is this we could be faster? Is it just me? It's just me? Okay, no good, it's not just me. Thank you. Let's form a support group. So I think the hardest part about this is where I've personally struggled as a leader, I think is trusting myself, right? Because I know that making great, in our case, software, I don't know what your businesses are, but making great software is not like building a house where you can get all the specs detailed and double checked, and as long as everything's to spec and all the people show up on time, you can make that house, right? That software is more like making a movie, where there is art and accident and magic and things you didn't anticipate along the way, and the film that you thought you were going to make in the beginning of the film may be quite a bit different of what actually makes it into theater later, but not in a bad way. It can be in a bad way or in a good way, actually, right? And so with that comes a certain amount of I expect things to go wrong and be harder than they seem to be at first. Right? I understand realistically, you don't know how to solve an engineering problem or how long it will take to solve an engineering problem you've never solved before, and it's all best guesses. And so in a culture like Moz, where we try to be supportive and have grace, and we want people to take risks, we shouldn't be doing things that are already solved, right? If we're doing that, what value are we creating? I think that for a long time, I was too ready to accept the okay, well, it's just harder than I thought. It just takes longer. Just, stuff just happens. And I think it took me an embarrassingly long time to be no, I think this should just be faster, and you're not willing to ask your people to stay late to finish a thing to meet a timeline. and that I hadn't done the job I need to do. In fact, I'd been modeling the wrong behavior of going to forgiveness and grace too easily and too quickly, and not enough challenge in the room at that moment of, like, what happened? You know, like, we need this, we need to hit this. What are you gonna do to fix it? Because it still needs to be solved by tonight. What are your ideas? You know, I hadn't done enough challenging in the room, and so I hadn't then created a culture where managers felt like, can I ask them to give away time with their family? You know, it's because we value family, right? And so I start by, well, like I always do, because I'm a big dork, I read like 15 books on urgency and bias to action and accountability and suggested other people read them. That did nothing. I talked about it at the managers meeting, and then they talked about it, and then the E-team, we all talked about it for a long time, which is a hilarious symptom of the problem. And then, and then finally I got to that, like, that more clarity of like, wow, the fact that we're still talking about this is actually the same problem. And so then I just started firing more people, and then asking the people below them to fire more people, right? Because it's those hard behaviors I was mentioning earlier that you have to have a certain kind of courage to get through, and that the niceness was my own niceness was getting in the way. And instead of trusting, what I aspire to be, what I'm trying to live now in the moment is, I can still be incredibly nice and dignified and give people their respect, give them the soft landing, and also say, hey, this isn't working. I don't understand all the reasons why your business unit isn't meeting its goals, but it's not. So I wish you very good luck. Here's a great package. You know, I support you as a person. But it's time to move on. And that is when things started to change. When I brought in new people who I hired very much for urgency and action and what's the right amount of data you need and when do you just go. And then they would sort of shook people, and people were like, oh my gosh, I'm not really ready to make this decision, but they just want to make the decision. And and then you hire a couple more of those people, and then you have a whole, like, you know, half of the company is like, yeah, we just make decisions this quickly now. And the other half are like, oh gosh, we're doing it. We're going to make this. And then, like, things started to kind of move, and then I gave my speeches and things to the managers of like, yeah, it's your job to do these things. Like, no one's gonna do it for you. And then they were scared, like, oh my God, I gotta fire this really wonderful, nice human. And then they were like, I did it. I'm creating a high performance team. I really earned my manager's stripes. It's not just a here I am to high five people job. That's why I get paid more. It's because it's a shitty job. You know, like, it's a shitty job. But, like, that's why I do it. And so now I think we've, like, rounded that corner to this is what it means when results matter. Not solely. It's not transactional, but, like, we've rounded the corner. I know I'm a big wimp. The rest of you are like, yeah, just fire people. But for us, that's like a big deal.
All right, so time for one last question. It's been amazing. Is if people in the audience want to hire for bias to action, when you were going through and interviewing for this bias to action, what were maybe one or two really great interview questions that you could tease that out?
Well, I have observed there's sort of two themes. There's two themes I like to, and by the way, this is executives, right? I don't spend a lot of time interviewing sort of IC, sort of early folks, and so I'm sure there's a different set of questions for them and metrics. So this is more for a leadership level. I really have observed that people who don't have a bias for action, they go to, I need more data, I need the best data, I need the quality data, I need more stakeholders. And so what I ask them to do is say, hey, tell me, walk me through a major decision that you owned, that you were involved with, that was very ambiguous. Just walk me through it, right? So the classic, behavioral interviewing technique, but then really following on with them. Well, who were the stakeholders? How did you have buy-in? When did you have enough information? What was the quality? What did you do differently? And really, what I'm trying to probe for is, did they have the courage to say, and how quickly did they get to, hey, the information isn't great, but we have enough, and even though I don't have complete buy-in, I'm gonna make the decision and go tell that person who I don't have buy-in from why I made the decision, and ask for their support. And not do what I think tends to happen. It's like, well, we're not really sure, and I'm not really sure. Do I even really own the decision? I'm a stakeholder, but do I own it? And well, they're not happy with me, so I'm just gonna punt for a little while, or wait until we have a special consultant to tell us the answer. All the things that I think happen. And so that's sort of one piece of it. And within that is also, again, testing for accountability and managerial courage to say, this is my decision, and here is how I'm going to make it. And can they articulate that? And then another like line of questioning that I think relates. I'm curious if you guys do. Maybe this connection is crazy, but I like to talk about politics and what does it mean to be political in the office. And I start with an observation of, I'll ask a question like, what does it mean to you when someone is political in the office? And they'll give a standard answer that I think is pretty obvious at first, right? Like, well, it's a derogatory term. It means somebody who is out for their own self-interest. And then I say, okay, well, probe into that. Like, tell me more about when is it a good thing to work a room and build stakeholders and do it informally, and that's how you show good leadership, is informal coalition building. And when is it damaging, and why? What's the difference, right? Because one person's, they're political is another person's hustler. And what I found is there's a relationship between people who have bias to action and clarity and managerial courage versus people who are political and they work sort of insidiously over like a 9-month period through a series of like hallway conversations and emails and like inception, to try to make a thing happen or cover their ass. On the flip side, right? Like protect something that's not actually working so they don't get blamed for it. So I look for answers that are around like, yeah, politics are because you're not being upfront in the meeting, being direct and being clear about the decision-making criteria and being clear about when it's good enough and we're just gonna go and here's the risk and I'm owning the decision. And people who operate that way don't get their political label, right? Because they're on the table and all the conversation happens in the room. So that's like, those are two things that are like, they're somehow related to that, I think. Curious what you guys, tweet me if you have a better question.
Well, I promised you that you would get candor, boldness, and spirit. Great round of applause. Thank you so much, Sarah.